I'm Joe. Today, I'm going to be doing the over-analyzing the silmarillion, Akallabêth, since this is pretty relevant to the TV recently came out, and, well, I really wanted to discuss just one, I guess, paragraph from the Akallabêth. Now, I'm going to kind of skip over some of the recap that Tolkien does here regarding the just thing that happens in Silmarillion. So that the way, sorry, hiccups. The quote I want to kind of discuss is the well, I'll start with, for his will remained and guided his servants, moving them ever to thwart the will of the Valar and to destroy those that obeyed them. This, along with the plant is still grew and sprouted, bearing evil fruit if any would tend them. So this stuff here is something I find particularly interesting because it's a reference to Morgoth, or I'm going to say Melkor, pouring his into the world, turning Arda essentially into his ring. Now, this is in Morgoth's Ring, the series of essays written by Tolkien analyzing his world, to the fact that Sauron had the ring to rule them all. Morgoth had the whole of Arda, so that a lot of its essence was marred. And you have this, well, he basically corrupted the world, so that this is why there is evil. Because the thing to bear in mind is that the notion of that it's a mythology. It's not simply regular fantasy. This is supposed to, in the frame narrative, take place millennia for our own recorded history. So you've got this creation myth, I guess you could say, for why evil exists. And the idea is Morgoth poured his essence into the world, just as Sauron poured his into the One Ring to rule them all. So that aside, I do hope people can hear me, as I'm having slight internet problems right. Crashed. I hope people can hear me. Sorry about that. I did not expect that. Okay, let me just share this again because I want you guys to see this. Now, okay, so I hope I'm still live because it would not be fun if I wasn't. I'm just going to check over on YouTube. Oh, yeah, I'm live. Goody. So that aside, let's get back on topic. All right, so we've got the Lords of the West who've shut out Melkor because, or Morgoth, because he's embodied himself. He's incarnated himself into the physical form that is Morgoth, the black foe of the world. That's what his name means. So from there, the next line of some importance, at least in my view, is that, the Lords of the West knew full well. They knew that there were still servants of Morgoth. Now, I think in the Lost Tales, you've got Fankil, who's kind of the lieutenant off in the east. He might still be a looming threat, but discounting that story, Gilfanan's tale, you have Sauron, who's still kind of running around. And so when therefore Morgoth had been thrust forth, they held council concerning the ages that should come after. I think there are two notions we should derive, and it's that, let me just start clicking over. It's that you can either look at it as, no, this picture's not good. I'm just looking to switch pictures. All right, well, this will have to do. It's that we're looking at either the notion that the Valar know everything that's going to happen, which, like predetermination, which I don't really fall into that camp because, in the Silmarillion itself, a lot of them have a good idea of what's going to happen according to the will of Eru, but they're not entirely sure. There are some things they don't know, but some, like Mandos, have a better idea of what's going to happen because, well, he's more directly connected to Eru Iluvatar's will. So that aside, we're going to just, I think that what was decided there is something that's relevant to the Lord of the Rings directly. It's the idea of how should they tackle future problems like Morgoth. Okay, so Morgoth's gone. He's beyond the edge of the world. And, there are still threats out there, such as Sauron. He hasn't come to assume, he didn't show up for his trial, so that's a problem. Okay, so he's not showing up. He's being a naughty, naughty boy, and he didn't cross west. Oh, hello, Google Blitz. I hope you're well, and I hope you can hear me. So, yeah, I think what was decided here was the strategy. Now, in The Lord of the Rings, you have Frodo early in the story, I think, who can hear the sea in his dreams. And I think that's a reference to Ulmo, kind of nudging him forward. At least that's one theory I've heard, and I like that one. So the idea is that, oh, well, that's good. Thank you for confirming that you can hear me. Is that the Valar are deciding here in this paragraph how to tackle future problems. They're not going to go in guns blazing, so to speak, like they did against Morgoth when they had no other choice at the War of Wrath. And that really brings up an issue I do have regarding how some read the War of Wrath and the whole Silmarillion. Yeah, I sometimes fall into this myself, but I've heard the idea the Valar did nothing and didn't want to do anything. But I think on some level they knew, because during the War of Powers, there was so much that was ravaged. So every time they kind of entered into conflict with Morgoth, it just ended in, like something like continents sinking. So that by the time of the Second Age, they're kind of going, yeah, let's not do that again. So how do we deal with this problem that will crop up? We know will crop up, but we're, we can't really, we got to touch it maybe with a needle next time rather than a nuke. So that's where I think this is where, in this paragraph, if we read it almost like a military council, they're deciding on, okay, so on sending the Astarion, should the situation mushroom cloud out of the elves' control in Middle Earth? Well, I say the elves, but actually mushroom cloud out of Arda's control. So that's how you could read this section about the council concerning the ages that should come after. It's basically them coming to a decision. And once they make that decision, they say they want to summon the Eldar to the west. So, okay, I'm just going to switch to a picture of Middle Earth. All right, now I know this one isn't very good. It's pixelated. So let's scroll in. So you got Valinor, and you've got, okay, you know what? I'm going to find a better picture. I don't like this. All right, this will have to do. Along with this. No, better yet. Sorry, it's just... yeah, I'll go with this one. So we're kind of... I clicked, and yet... All right, 1 second. I'm having some minor computer problems regarding opening pictures. That's weird. All right. So, and if that turns people off, well, nothing I can do about that. Actually, well, they summoned the Eldar west, and, to return west. And so one thing you have to bear in mind is that this picture is not very good, but anyways, they were to cross Belagare, which is the Great Ocean. That's Quenya for Great Ocean, and go to Amman, travel west. And this brings me to the follow-up quote, which I'll just have to open up real quick. I really do envy how fast Philosopher Games can sometimes do this. He's Speedy Gonzalez. And hello, Magavan and Aries Aurelian. Always welcome sight. I was just over-analyzing the Akallabêths, opening, well, paragraphs after the brief recap. Well, there's an entire page of recaps, but I decided to skip that and just jump to analyzing the text that kind of interests me. And that's kind of a prelude to kind of the story of the Rings of Power, sort of. Basically the prelude to the whole tale of Numenor. So at this point, the elves are called to hearken to the summons dwell. And well, I'm not reading correctly. They're called west across Belagare, and those that hearken to the summons dwelt in the Isle of Eressëa, Tall Eressëa, which means the Lonely Isle in Quenya. And it's not hard to see why it would be lonely there, because, well, there are very few of the elves left in Middle-earth, and this is the bridge, so to speak, between the mortal realm and Valinor. So you've not yet quite reached Valinor yet when you arrive here. At least that's my impression. So, but the elves don't exactly disappear when they get here, because, like they do in Middle-earth, because they're close enough to Valinor to last a while. And then I imagine they could probably make the hop over, so to speak. Although Tol Eressëa is also known as Dor Fidwen, so in Sindarin, the land of release. So as you can see, there's a great release from the great weight, the heaviness that comes over the Eldar over the course of the millennia that they live in Middle-earth. So, yeah. So they're invited to Tol Eressëa, which is also the island, which was basically the boat that, well, Ulmo used it like a boat almost to bring the Eldar when they first arrived in Middle-earth, or Beleriand, I should say, from east to west. And from there, they'd hop over to Amman. But now it's being made into a permanent kind of residence. And Tol Eressëa, Andor, I was about to get to at some point, but yeah, there's Andor, the land of gifts, which I'm just going to quickly look up. Let me see. Yeah, that's Numenor, and yeah, I was going to get to Numenor. Thank you for reading so far ahead of me, Aries Aurelian. All right. So I'm just going to bring up on screen Tol Eressëa because, well, someone's going quicker than I can keep up. All right. I should go in for the... Oh, that image isn't working. Huh. All right. So until I can get the other image working, which, yeah. So here's Tall Arasea next to Valinor. Obviously, Tall Arasea is the bigger one. I'm joking. No, it's the small one. Now, I'm just going to do one quick thing and just do one image transition, because I got to transition an image into a different kind of file because for some reason it's not opening. The original zoom in image of Tall Arasea is not working, and I really want to share it with you guys. So let me just save that. Oop, that clicked. Okay. All right. So we've got Tall Arasea next to Aman. This is where they go. And, you know, they stop over there. But I found this really cool image. All right. Let me share it. All right. There. And I'm just going to transition over to this much better image, which I really like. All right. Here it is. So, yeah, here's the general geography of Tall Arasea, at least according to one artist rendition. So, yeah, we've got the Bay of Eldamar. I really like that name. But, of course, the most noteworthy structure, or sort of place, is the city, the port city of Avalone. And of course, we have the Cottage of Lost Play from Tolkien's original drafts, which I'm not going to lie, I'm not terribly fond of the Cottage of Lost Play's stories. Elfwine has some good moments, but generally I found it a pale imitation of the Prose Edda and Poetic Edda ideas. Which, in the Prose Edda, you've got the idea that there's a king who ends up kind of at odds with some of the figures who would later become the gods of the Norse pantheon. And he is told, I think in a dream by someone, all the Norse myths. And it's been years since I've read the Prose Edda, but I remember that. And Tolkien was really drawing inspiration from that, sort of, as part of the frame narrative. But it's not as fascinating as as this interpretation of the Norse, Aesir and whatnot, and how the knowledge of them was introduced to mankind. It's not as interesting. Although that version of the myths involves Odin and his gang basically being descended from Troy. Yeah, House of 100 Chimneys sounds a bit industrial for Valinor. Yeah, it does. And I don't think it quite fits with the tone of, you know, like the pre-modern kind of element to Tolkien's work, as Tolkien was not the most fond guy of modernism. And yeah, there was at one point the idea of a 19th century-esque steampunk story with Numenor, which he eventually moved away from. So thank you, Ares Aurelian, for mentioning that. Hello, Spectre. Sorry for not immediately noticing you were there. Now, Avalone is obviously derived from Avalon, the island from the Arthurian myths where King Arthur goes to reside. And Avalone, or Avalon, the term is an old term for Apple Island, or the island of apples. And apples are, of course, a symbol of good health and future joy that is to come. They're associated with kind of sin in Judeo-Christian myths, you know, like the apple of the knowledge of good and evil, I think, and whatnot. But in Norse and Greek myths, it's not. It's associated with fertility as well, and with major feminine goddesses of love and sensuality and whatnot. You have Idun, the goddess of youth, and you have Aphrodite, but they're also kind of associated to an extent. Aphrodite herself is, you can associate with Freya as well, as, Freya, queen of the gods of Norse mythology, but it's primarily Idun and I think the golden apples of Hera in one of the Heracles stories. But you've got these old classic myths that, are associated with apples, so there's a nice little nod there. And I'm sure Tolkien knew about Avalon meaning island of apples. Anyways, it's also said to be where Excalibur was forged. So that's also a cool little detail I found out when I was researching Avalon. And now let's kind of switch over back to the text, as I kind of want to just continue over analyzing it real quick. And I'm just going to close some other windows. All right, so I've discussed how the city of Avalone, which derived from Avalon, which is supposed to be an entire island, Tolkien turns into a single city. For it is of all cities the nearest to Valinor, and the Tower of Avalone is the first sight that the mariner beholds when at last he draws nigh to the undying lands over the leagues of the sea. So, yeah, he turns it into a great port city. Excuse me. And this is where, generally, I think that we should be taking this to mean the mariners of Numenor, of course. To the fathers of men of the three faithful houses, rich reward also was given. I don't know what's with me today. Eonwe came among them and taught them, and they were given wisdom and power and life more enduring than any other of mortal races have possessed. Now, this was a big mistake later, as we find out, because, the whole challenging the gods thing. But I think the sentiment was well-intentioned, but they forgot about basic human nature, that humans can be fairly greedy. And once they have something, they want more. That's not everyone, but that's a lot of people. And the Valar kind of screwed up, I think, there, and misread how it might happen. Like, just because Elros and his generation are fine, are great guys, are nigh on perfect, there's the later generations won't be. But here we also get another idea of Tolkien's that harkens back to, I think, the Roman period. And, well, actually, it harkens back to, I think, Cassius Dio, I think it is. Yeah. And what he ends up saying is that now our realm goes from, our people have descended from an age of gold and silver to one of iron and rust. And the idea is that there was a golden age. Like for Rome, for example, you might look at Romulus and his generation, or even Brutus's generation, the founder of the Roman Republic, the res publica, the public thing. Or you could look at Scipio Africanus's generation as the golden one, as he fought off Hannibal Barca and conquered him in the fields of Zama, and then conquered Carthage. So if you look at that as kind of a golden age, and even look at the Gracchi brothers up through Caesar and whatnot as a silver age, you then get, in terms of how great it is, and, down through the generations. Although, of course, if you're more of a fan of, what's his name? Shoot, why can't I remember his name? The writer, the historian of how the Roman Empire ended, basically, he would probably argue that the 5 good emperors was the golden age. But anyways, the idea here is that as our ages are progressing, like at the start of a country or a culture, it's the golden age, and men are at their boldest or at their greatest. And down through the generations, they're being weeded out, so to speak. The manliness, the courage, the wisdom, the greatness is being frittered away. And in time, you eventually have a collapse of sorts. So here you have, for example, the generation of Elros. Like, Elros is the greatest of the Numenorian kings. I think we can all kind of agree to that. But then down through the generations, you get some pretty great kings, like you get his immediate successors. Even Tar Aldarion is, I give him a lot of, I don't really like Aldarion, but he's an incredible monarch. And, that's the golden age of Numenor. But then you get to a silver age up to like Tar Minister or something. And, the quality of the Numenorian leaders just declines. And I think that's what Tolkien's kind of hinting at here and kind of discussing here, where the three, like the fathers of men of the three faithful houses, which reward was given. Eonwë came among them and taught them, and they were given wisdom and power and life more enduring than any other of mortal race have possessed. So here we have to read into it that they're the best at the time. But you can also, I find that if you read something like Tacitus, you can see a bit of a, if you read it like he would regarding Roman history, you could see a bit of a chiding side to it. Like, like our ancestors were this great. How come you're not this great? Because in the frame narrative, you got to bear in mind this is kind of written long after the fall of Numenor. So you've got a bit of a scolding here. And at least that's how I like to kind of read it. There's a lot of different ways to read even a text like this, even the most simple part. And that's the beauty of Tolkien. He's pulling from a lot of great literary and historic traditions with his entire Middle-earth universe. It was raised by, whoops, I skipped ahead. A land was made for the Edain to dwell in, neither part of Middle-earth nor of Valinor, for it was sundered from either by a wide sea, by Belagir, I should say, I think I pronounced that right, the Great Sea. Yet it was nearer to Valinor. It was raised by Osei out of the depths of the Great Water. He's the great Maiar of the seas. And it was established by Ole and enriched by Yavanna. Oh, wow. Okay, I forgot about that. It was established by Ole. Obviously, he's the craftsman of the Valar. And enriched by Yavanna, the great nature goddess of sorts, or spirit of the Valar. And the Eldar brought thither flowers and fountains out of Tall Eressëa. That land the Valar called Andor. Yeah, there you are, Ares Aurelian, the reference to the land of gift. That's how the Valar regard this land. It's their gift to the great fathers of men, the great men who fought on their side against Morgoth. And the star of Eorendil shone bright in the west as a token that all was made ready and as a guide over the sea. And men marveled to see that silver flame in the paths of the sun. So here, yeah. Oh, hi, Rosie Gamgee. I'm glad to see you. And Edward Gibbon, thank you, Spectre. How could I forget his name? And yeah, all I'm going to discuss today is basically the kind of opening paragraphs of the Akallabêth, just as part of a series of sorts and as a celebration for the 1-year anniversary of our first real Tolkien video on the channel. If it doesn't appeal to you, I totally get it. I'm trying out a different style, a bit like Preston Jacobs over-analyzing the Blood and Fire novel by George R.R. Martin. And I've seen a few other people overanalyze books like this. So it was something I wanted to try out. Like I said, if it doesn't appeal to you, perfectly understandable. I totally get it. I just like this sort of overanalyzing of any kind of text. It's the historian in me. But, all right. So Land of Gift and the Star of Eorendil, we're all familiar with, I think. And as to Numenor, well, we get the image of the star-shaped island rising out of the sea, which Okay, let me see about changing images. 1 sec. I didn't crack it open yet. Okay. Let me just... I'm having image problems again. Okay, no problem. Hopefully this will just... let's see. 1 second, just bear with me. I just had to change kind of the formatting of the image. Okay, because I do want to go over the geography. Okay. Oh, hello and welcome, Laurellen the Other. I don't know if I've seen you before, as I'm currently functioning on less than 2 hours of sleep. So if I'm doing poorly, everybody let me know. And if I don't remember seeing you in the comments before, Laurellen the Other, I do apologize. I'm glad to see you here. I'm glad you enjoyed the videos. They're a joy to make. At least a lot of them, most of them are, especially the Tolkien stuff. All right, I will discuss a bit of the geography, mostly what interests me. But the thing with this series is the more I go into the Mariner's Wife Tale and the Akallabêth, the more the different parts of the geography will be explored as we go. I prefer to do it that way in a storytelling style. It's easier for me to remember. I think it's easier for everyone to remember. And as we go, I want to do a recap every time just of the geography of Numenor, at least for 5 quick seconds every time. The geography of these maps is very important to me because I'm a bit of a amateur cartographer. I love cartography as a hobby. I love drawing maps. I do it all the time. So I love appreciating other people's. And okay, Rosie, I'll bear that in mind in the future at some point, probably in a few hours to get some sleep. Okay, it's C. Laurellen. Okay, sorry for not recognizing you, Laurellen the Other, or C. Laurellen. Yeah, maps are the best, and Tolkien's, a lot of them were drawn by Christopher Tolkien, I believe. So that just makes them even more awesome. I love Christopher Tolkien. Anyways, I'm going to slow down a little because I think I'm talking too fast. Now, this is the island that the Valar drew out of the sea. I'm just going to... Did I close the text for myself? No, I need that. From my... Okay. My online copy of the... Well, I should say my Kindle copy of the Silmarillion. I've got about 3-4 copies. All right, let me see. Wrong text. I think I'm doing poorly on this stream. All right, it was, let's see. It was raised by Osei out of the depths of the Great Water. Yeah. So this is what Osei drew out, a star-shaped island divided into multiple provinces. Hyar Nustar in the southwest, Hyar Rostar in the southeast, Orostar in the east, Forostar in the north, Andustar in the west, and Mitalmar in the center, along with Arandor here. And yeah, so we have Romena, of course, the great port city, and Armenelos, the Golden. I love this city. This is where, I'm actually going to be honest, some of the Rings of Power art did look cool. Although I don't know which city it was that they did because I haven't watched the show, but I would hope that it's Romena in the east. Because I always imagine that looking grand. As to Andunier in the west, this is the westernmost point, of course. And from here, you could look out west. And it's interesting that, like, already the Numenorians are the Western Essie people. Numenor is nicknamed Western Essie. It's called Andor, as Ares Aurelian pointed out very helpfully. That is to say, the land of gifts. But Andunier is where, well, Aragorn's ancestors stem from. But it's interesting that they're the westernmost people of the westernmost people. I guess rather like how Tolkien might have regarded Britain. Because, that's the furthest point west, to an extent, of Europe. And Men of the West, of course, you think of kind of a fictional Europe there. At least that's kind of how I look at it. And I'm apparently losing people. I just noticed that there's less people than before. It's all right. I'm going to wrap it up soon because there's not much more text I want to examine. And I think that I'm actually starting to go on smaller and smaller tangents, and I don't want to go on tangents and get distracted from the main focus. So obviously the men from the continent, led by Elros, over the course of several decades, ended up landing in Numenor, and they were guided, apparently according to this text, by the Star of Earendel. So the morning star, I believe. And yeah, so that's about. And of course, the Valar laid a piece on the sea for many days, probably one too many days. I'm joking there. And sent sunlight and a sailing wind. And next I'm going to have to, at some point with this kind of stream, examine even more of the text, the next little bit. So yeah, it does get better. It does get better, Laurel and the other. But I think that's about all I've got in me for now. Like I said, I didn't want this to be a 2-hour stream or something. This is just going to be a short. It's going to be however long it needs to be. And that way I don't drone for too long. And that way I don't drone for too short. And if people want to interject and ask questions, they can. And in turn, I can try to overanalyze as much as I can until I've run out of breath. So I think I've talked my fill. Although let's see if the chat's got anything it wants to throw at me. Okay. I'll just check something out real quick. Okay. I think, oh, you know what? I've got another image that I want to quickly go over just as a, it shows the sea lanes of Numenor. And I thought that was an interesting thing to add before I kind of sign off for today. All right, no problem, Laurel and the other. This is my last hurrah for this. Thank you, Spectre. Cool stream. Here it is. All the the different sea lanes of Numenor. I thought this was pretty neat, and it does give insight into probably how, yeah, like they're closer to Valinor, like said, and the voyages of the Dunedain, and you have to the east of the south. I thought this was a pretty neat image, which would also show kind of how I think the Numenorians would regard themselves, as they're closer to Valinor, so they're superior to the men of Middle-earth. At least that's how they'd perceive themselves eventually. Anyways, I'll catch you all later. And for any newcomers, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button to stay tuned for more. And toodles to everyone in the chat.